The Ladakh region is often known as the only cold desert in India. Which monastery do you remember?
I remember the Hemis Monastery that
Okay.
I went
So that's
to.
the largest and wealthiest monastery in the Ladakh region. And let me tell you a story about the Hemis Monastery, right? There was a Russian once who claimed to have found some artifacts, some scriptures, which said that Jesus, when he was traveling through this region, he actually visited Hemis Monastery.
Yeah, and one more tip, Neil, that when you're in the Nubra Valley, don't just hit the bed immediately. Because the skies in Nubra, all of Ladakh, but the skies in Nubra are something just out of the world. And of course, Ladakh became really popular with Three Idiots as a movie.
If Bollywood goes somewhere, a place has to be famous.
When some place gets really famous, then it's our responsibility as tourists and as everyone else to really keep that place the way it is for everyone else to enjoy.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. Now, recently, my wife Heta and I welcomed a baby girl. And whenever a baby arrives at your home, there are hundreds of visitors who want to come see the baby. Now, whenever we are with Raya, we don't talk about travel at all. But when we are not with Raya, because it's in the genes, Sunila and I often just end up in a conversation about travel. Now, Sunila and I were discussing this, and Sunila and I were like, okay, it's about time we do another episode on Leh Ladakh. So, without wasting any time, let's jump into this. Sunila, you have been to Leh Ladakh, I have been to Leh Ladakh. Now, this is a very captivating destination for any type of traveler, whether you like cultural stuff, whether you like history, whether you like adventure, whether you like biking, whether you like driving around, whether you like food. It's a very captivating destination. It's a very serene destination. So when I talk about Leh or Ladakh, what first comes to your mind?
Neil, I think it's a very different destination compared to the rest of India. And I think the landscapes in Ladakh are completely unmatched. So, the first thing that comes to mind are those rugged mountain peaks,
Yep.
those beautiful, pristine lakes. Like the color of the water is something you have to see it to believe it. I don't think I have seen that color anywhere else, not only in India, but across the world. So I think it's those dramatic landscapes because there's so much drama happening in those landscapes all the time, right? At one point you're on the serene lake, the next you're on the mountains, then you have the monasteries and the peace and the calm that they bring. And I think it's just perfect to have the monasteries there because the entire surrounding is so serene, and then you have these beautiful monasteries that are just hanging off those cliffs. So you can do your treks and hikes as well. You have those tall Buddha statues, and then of course there's culture, heritage. There's different kinds of foods to try. Again, that you don't get across the rest of India. And for me, what I think of is also the roads because it was amazing to see such good quality of roads also for a large part of the state high up there. Like you are at the northernmost part of India, so you're like this in this crowning jewel surrounded by the Himalayas. And secondly, it's the altitude as well, right? So I think it's like Leh city itself where you land in, you take a flight and you're going straight into like 11,000 feet more. Like I think it's 11,500 something feet. So you're landing high up there. So it's really a destination that rates very high up for me when it comes to India. So I think it's the same for everyone, I guess. Once you go to Ladakh, you can never forget that destination.
Whenever you're going north, you're imagining mountains covered in snow, and then when there's no snow, like we see in Shimla or Himachal, there are these pine trees, right? Like massive tall trees. What was your expectation before you went to Leh? And you mentioned the rugged mountains, right? What was your reaction when you first saw the mountains?
Really didn't know what to expect. Of course, you read about it. We have so much of information at our hands nowadays. You can even see the reels. You can see so many different videos and so many things. But I don't think all of that really prepares you for what lays in store.
Yep.
You still keep thinking mountains and you're still comparing it to Manali or
Yep.
the Uttarakhand and all of that. And then when you land, it's almost like naked mountains out there, right? It's just
Correct.
stone and you're standing and you feel like you're surrounded, but at the same time, you feel peaceful. You start your journey in Ladakh with Leh
Yeah.
as a city, right? And it's one of the most high altitude cities in India.
Hmm.
But there are many other different high altitude cities as well.
Correct.
So, for you, what do you think really puts Leh apart and aside from every other city there?
I think, you said, you put it right. It's naked mountains, right? Now, even before you get to Leh, like getting to Leh, there are three different types of roads that you can take, right? One is you can do the Srinagar, Kargil, Leh route, where you, once the roads open up, you actually can visit Leh like that. But nowadays, you can fly directly to Leh. And often, if you're in the window seat of your plane, you'll see those mountains. And I often term it as like, or I metaphorically put it that, you're going north, right?
Right.
And going north, like in the Game of
Yeah.
Thrones, where you look out of the window, and often the Leh flights are very early in the morning. It's at 5 a.m. or something like that. So you get onto the flight, you're like, oh my God, I've woken up for this red eye flight, and you doze off. 1.5 or 2 hours into the flight, what you really then do is you wake up and you look out of the window and you're like just mountains and mountains and mountains. It's an incredible sight. So my first travel tip, even before we talk about Leh, is that try to get a window
Window.
seat. If you don't have a window seat, then you might miss out on what
Or keep
that's yeah
nudging
what
the person
exactly.
next to you to peep out and keep looking out, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we did then that when we were in Svalbard and we said, excuse me, but I need some photos, and people are generally really helpful. So of course try to get a window seat, but if not, make sure there's someone really nice sitting next to you who's cooperative as well.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
go to Svalbard, we go to Leh. It's like that, right? So,
Yes.
Leh town, right? I think the one thing that strikes me about Leh town every time I've been there is it's like a cultural melting pot of different cultures. There's the Tibetan culture, there's the Buddhist culture, there's different cultures from India that you see in that particular place. And this is seen in the way people dress. This is seen in the food out there. And this is seen in the different attractions out there. So, one of the biggest attractions out there is Leh Palace, which is like a 9 storied palace. Back in the day, it was so Leh town was an important part on the ancient trade route because it connected all of China, all of Mongolia with the Indian subcontinent. Now, when that trade route was uh, on, Leh used to be that one place where people would stop, people would rest, and then continue on with their journey. So, Leh Palace is one thing that really, really resembles another palace in Lhasa, and that's why it's quite famous. Second thing about Leh is that it then acts as a gateway for all of the other excursions that we talk about. The monasteries that you've spoken about, the rivers where you can go river rafting. I spoke about adventure. Leh becomes that point where you can stay here and you can go to all of these other places. Once the Khardungla Pass opens, you can go to Nubra Valley. And once you go to Nubra Valley, you can enjoy the camels out there. You can go to Pangong Lake. So Leh acts as that one center where you can really enjoy everything about the Leh Ladakh region and just still stay here. But of course, distances are long. And here I'd like to mention one more thing, right? When the roads are not open because the snow has still not melted, Leh is a town that gives you a certain version of it, right? But I often tell people go to Leh by flight when the roads are not open, and then go to Leh again by road, either from Manali or Srinagar when the roads have opened. Why is that? Because the town is the same, right? But what you see when the roads have not opened is all of the habitat, all of the food that is frozen, and then you're having it. And what experience you get in the peak of summer, that could be July or August, is completely different because roads have opened, supplies have started coming in. So you see more rugged Leh in the months of April and May, and you see a Leh that is more modern than what it was in the months of April and May, in the months of June, July, August, and September. So it's a very different thing. But Yep, Leh is that one place where you can do all of these excursions.
I think I like the way you put it. Like, and it's true. The season for Leh is extending. The season for traveling to Ladakh earlier, it was only July, August, like 2 months, maybe
Yeah.
3 months. And then once people went, the word of mouth spread, and everyone's really enjoying these. And they said, okay, I think I can take the cold. Let me start going in the spring season. So April, May started. And in fact, the Chadar trek also happens during winter.
Yeah.
So you can go in there, but there were some restrictions out there on that trek. So if someone's interested, you should definitely check all the restrictions before going there, because like we said, this is the northernmost city and the northernmost area of India. So it's always going to be like that. Neil, so from what you said, what I feel is like you could stay in Leh and still do a tour of Ladakh, right?
Yeah.
Like you can make Leh your base and then keep
Yes.
going to different places. And you mentioned the different cultures out there, the Tibetan culture, the Buddhist culture, the different cultures of India also that you can see there. And of course, one of the places where you keep seeing the Tibetans is the market and the
Yes.
jewelry that you can come back with. So the silver jewelry, I think, was one of my favorite things to shop for in
I
Leh.
didn't know that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if you go to the market and you see all of them, you you will see, like on our women's special tours, I think along with all the sightseeing, the one place that they all love is the market in Leh, because
Yes.
everyone wants to have a small piece of a souvenir which is from
Hmm.
the place. And I think the Tibetan jewelry that you get here, and some of it is actually made in silver, like proper silver, is it's very distinct. So
Yeah.
it kind of when you come back, it adds that memory to you that okay, this is something that I got from Leh. So definitely the Tibetan silver is one. But you mentioned Buddhism, and I remember from my trip to Leh is the monasteries that I went
Yeah.
to, and they are kind of similar, but they are also kind of different. So, what is the significance of these
Which
monasteries here?
monastery that comes, like, do you remember
I
from
remember
your
the
visit?
Hemis Monastery that
Okay.
I
So
went
that's the
to.
largest and
Yeah.
wealthiest monastery in the Ladakh region. And let me tell you a story about the Hemis Monastery, right? The Hemis Monastery, of course, is the largest and wealthiest. But at the same time, one thing that is a legend, okay? It has not been proven. But there was a Russian once who claimed to have found some artifacts, some scriptures, which said that Jesus, okay, Jesus, when he was traveling through this region, he actually visited Hemis Monastery. And that is a legend, we can't prove it, but often it is said, because of what was found, that Jesus visited Hemis Monastery, and Hemis Monastery started becoming popular amongst different communities across the world, um, because of this one legend. But at the same time, if you recall, when you go to Hemis Monastery, it's a monastery that is very quiet, and it sort of gives you this feeling that it is shrouded in legend, shrouded in mystery. Being the largest, you expect it to be more busy than what it is. But the moment you enter the monastery, you're just in that zen mode, you're just in that calm mode. So Hemis Monastery definitely is one. There's also another monastery, which is the Thiksey Monastery, which is a resemblance of the Potala monastery or Potala Palace in Lhasa, and it's renowned for a large statue that it has. I think it is 49 feet or something like that. A statue of the Maitreya Buddha, and that is its draw. Now, as you go about the region, you will find many monasteries. You will find the Spituk Monastery, you'll find the Shea Monastery. So there are many monasteries. But one of the things that I really liked doing while I was there was that you go to one monastery a day, not more than that, but you just roam the grounds of the monastery, take it in. Instead of you trying to click photos, just be away
Soak
from
it
your
in.
phone and just like soak it in. So that was one good thing about the monasteries, I would
No,
say.
you're right, and I remember, just like we do in other temples, after you've been and seen the idol and everything, take a round.
Yeah.
Go around, like we say a pradakshina. Just go around, because it shows you that place, the temple or the monastery from all the sides as well.
Yep.
Also gives you an idea of the surrounding, and it brings a lot of peace to do that, honestly. And there is also like an explanation for that, because Pradakshina means looking to the south. And apparently, I just remember
That's what it
this.
means. I
Yes,
I didn't
looking
know.
to the south. So Dakshina is Dakshin area.
Yeah.
And they say that I had read this in a Devdutt Patnaik book or a podcast, and he said that your ancestors are to the south. So
Okay.
when you are turn around, so you pray to your ancestors, and then the west is wealth, east is knowledge. So that is why you take an entire circle, and the north is culture. And you complete everything whenever you take a pradakshina of sorts. So I
Oh.
think that's just some trivia, but it came to my mind right now. And I think that's the same thing that we would do in a monastery. But Neil, Leh, of course, you will stay in there, you will go to different monasteries. And like you said, there are a lot of things to do either as a day trip from Leh, or if you can start driving from Leh and going ahead.
Yeah.
And of course, Ladakh became really popular with Three Idiots as a movie. The Pangong Lake, yeah, I think, as it is with a lot of movies and other things that were shot, you get confused. Should I pay attention to the storyline, or should I look at the beautiful scenery behind it, right? And Pangong was one such lake. I think all of us started Googling and finding out, where is this place? What is this? So, what really makes this lake so special? Like, everyone after going there is also amazed by it. I remember taking a photo sitting on top of a yak out there, and there are all these people going around, and everybody calls themselves Amir Khan out there. So, it's funny in that sense. But Pangong, let's talk about it.
Well, Pangong, situated maybe at a height of about 4,200, 4,300 meters above sea level, is the highest saltwater lake in India. I think it's probably the highest saltwater lake in the world, right? Um, why is it famous? First thing, Three Idiots, right? If Bollywood goes somewhere, a place has to be famous. And not many people knew about Pangong Lake before Amir Khan and Kareena Kapoor and the cast of Three Idiots went there, right? But once you go there, another thing that makes it famous is the rugged terrain and the crystal blue water that you can see. And many a times when you go to a particular lake, often you will find boating, you will find here there's nothing like that. Here you're just by the lake. But you're standing on one side. On the other side, this lake extends into uh, what is probably Chinese occupied Tibet. And so you can see China on the other side. And it's India, China, it's all of these waters. You're enjoying your Maggie because you'll get the
Of
Maggie. See,
course.
Maggie in the mountains is completely different, right? Having Maggie at home and having Maggie in the mountains, there's just something different to it. But one of the most unique things is, how is Pangong Lake a saltwater lake? So we had actually done an episode of this on our other podcast, Know the Unknown. And I think it was the first or second episode. So when the tectonic plates collided, right, the Indian and the Eurasian tectonic plates collided, what happened is the Himalayas rose. Now, before that, this was just ocean. So when the plates collide and they start rising, what happens is the ocean gets displaced. And as the ocean gets displaced, a small body of water is what became that lake. And uh, as the Himalayas started rising, and even today they are rising, right? And of course, this was
Yeah.
millions of years ago. The salt water got trapped. It can't go anywhere. And today, the Ladakh region is often known as the only cold desert in India. What is the definition of a desert? A desert is not something hot. A desert is a place which is extremely dry, extremely sparse in vegetation that you will see. And that is what Ladakh is, right? So the saltwater was stuck in these mountains. It had no outlet because a lake generally goes into a river goes into the sea. But here there's nothing like that. And because the climate is so dry, the only thing that happens to the water is that water can evaporate. So the salt water, along with the minerals that are flowing in from all of the glaciers or the rivers into Pangong Lake, the concentration of the minerals and the salts tends to get concentrated in the lake. So it gets saltier and saltier. Of course, it's not going to become the Dead Sea, but that's the story of Pangong Lake, and that's what makes it so special. It's one of the highest saltwater lakes in the world. There is also another lake called the Moriri Lake, which is also about 4,500 meters above sea level. And that's one of the highest lakes in India. That is completely different to Pangong Lake, but that's what makes Pangong special. That when you're going from Leh Town to Pangong Lake, and if you're taking a particular route, you'll also pass something known as the Changla Pass. And the Changla Pass is the third highest motorable road in the world. Now, you have driven on the roads of Leh. I have not driven in Leh, but when we were at Pangong, I managed to drive a small stretch, and it was fun, and it was something else. So, this sereneness, this calmness that Pangong gives you, and the incredible backdrop for your pictures that Pangong gives you make it famous. This story of why it is a saltwater lake make it famous. So I think, yeah, I
Yeah.
would say that about
I think
Pangong.
so. And I think that is the reason, all of that you said right now, the glacial water, the minerals and everything, that also gives it that special color, that blue color that you see in Pangong
Yeah.
is because of all these reasons. And Neil, I think, when some place gets really famous, then it's our responsibility as
Yeah.
tourists and as everyone else to really keep that place the way it is for everyone else to enjoy. Because if we don't pay attention to conservation, then something can be over tourism and get a bit too famous for its own good. So I think
Yes.
that's just something to keep in mind. But you mentioned that Ladakh is a cold desert, and we all know that. But along with desert come the camels.
Yes.
And one place that you see them is the Nubra Valley,
Yes.
right? So you can go into Nubra Valley and you actually see the double humped camels here
Yes.
and you can ride them here, right? So how far is Nubra? How do you go there? Can you stay there in Nubra and then enjoy these camel rides?
So when the Khardungla Pass opens, see, I spoke about the Changla Pass, which is the third highest motorable road in the world. The Khardungla, or as it is called, the mighty Khardungla, is the
Yes.
highest motorable road in the world. Now, from Leh town, you take the Khardungla and you go to Nubra Valley. Once you're in Nubra Valley, of course, you can stay there, but you can do a tent stay there, or there are some establishments where you can really stay. What can you really do there? I think you can do trick photography there,
Okay.
because what does trick photography need? Trick photography, I think, doesn't need a background. Trick photography can be done in very flat places, right? And you can do it in Gujarat when you go to the run of Kutch. You can do in the salt flats of Bolivia. Similar trick photography can also be done in Nubra Valley. Along with that, there are these camels. Now, how did the camels come here? Now, the camels were used to travel through the ancient Silk Route that I mentioned at the start of the episode. And the unique thing, like you said, is that these camels are double humped. They are the double humpback camels. So you can do a camel ride. But more so, when you hit the Ladakh region, you just want that 2 hours of calm to be there. And that is what is special about Nubra Valley. So when you get to Nubra Valley, it is slightly lower than Leh town. So that's why the breathlessness that you often feel when you get to Leh, you don't feel
Yeah,
that
no.
as much. But again, it's a desert, so it's dry. So when you go to Nubra Valley, there are the sand dunes. There are different adventure activities that you can do. So make sure you enjoy that, and you enjoy the sight of these camels, because all of the photos that the Veena World tour managers keep posting about Leh are just incredible, and even more incredible are the photos of Pangong and the Nubra Valley.
Yeah, and one more tip, Neil, that when you're in the Nubra Valley, don't just hit the bed immediately. Take your time out, wait till all the lights of your tent or wherever you're staying have gone down, and then look up to the
Oh yeah,
skies.
I missed that.
Because the skies in Nubra, all of Ladakh,
Yeah.
but the skies in Nubra are something just out of the world. You can just see the Milky Way just by looking up at the skies. You don't need special equipment, you don't need anything. And in fact, Neil, recently there was a lot of photos of the northern lights being shared from everywhere. And even from Ladakh, it had like a purple glow from one
Yeah.
of the photos that I saw. So you really, the sky is special out here. So when in Nubra, make sure you keep some time. And if you love photographing the sky, this is a great place to go and take your tripod and go and then photograph the
Yes.
skies.
They say that Nubra has the darkest skies in India. And if you're a stargazer and if you like looking at stars, taking your telescope out and going out there, Nubra should be the place that you go to. So very valid point.
Yeah,
I
because
totally missed that.
like you go for dark sky tourism. There is that thing called dark sky tourism where you go in just to see the sky at night. And it's so popular in Utah. It's so popular in the US in many
Yeah.
places. But we have it right here in our own
Yeah,
backyard.
just like a
So
2.5 hour flight from here.
yeah, so we should definitely look at that. Neil, you mentioned that going into Nubra, you cross the Khardungla, and you also mentioned the Changla Pass sometime back. recently we had a query from someone who, usually we advise people that come in, stay in Leh for 2 days, acclimatize yourself, and then go to the Khardungla. And that's also what the army and these authorities would advise. But we had a request from people saying that I want to come in and not spend any time
To acclimatize.
acclimatizing and land and just go straight to the Khardungla, and I'm ready to take whatever consequences. But there are some challenges and to visit Khardungla and Changla, right? So what's your take on it?
I would not say there are some challenges, but
I mean,
being,
in terms of
yeah.
altitude and stuff,
So
right?
the air is thin,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The oxygen that your body gets is much lower than what we are getting here at sea level. So whenever you go to Leh, the travel tip that I would give everyone is that spend the first day acclimatizing. The other travel tip that I would give
And
everyone,
when you mean acclimatizing, it's like just lying down
no,
and doing
yeah,
nothing.
I'll
Okay,
come to
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So spend the first day acclimatizing by just lying down, not doing anything. Keep drinking a lot of water, and lying down is one thing, but sometimes people are like, oh, I want to go pose, I'll just go down to the reception, ask them for wi-fi, come back up. Even climbing like those, a small flight of
Yes.
stairs can get to you. So the first tip when you go to Leh is acclimatize. Second tip, drink a lot of water. Third tip is that we often travel, and whenever we travel in the evenings, everyone is like, okay, let's get our alcoholic beverages out. When you're traveling through Leh, try to have that holiday where you don't have alcohol at all. When you're having water also, or whenever you're having a lot of food, have food, but don't have it in excess, because it may happen that the food there is cooked in hard water. And when you eat food that is cooked in hard water, it takes a longer time to digest. So that is why the first day is spent acclimatizing, resting, not doing anything. All of our tours also do that. Now, if the second day also you're not feeling all that right, it's often said that rest it out, right? That's why you'll see a lot of the tours will that we have a longer duration. It's not like go for 3 days and come back. And the first time I went to Leh was when I was about 22 years old, and I had the same mindset
I
that
can do
I can do
everything.
it,
Yeah.
what is going to happen to me? And all
Yeah.
of us have been in that situation. But two times in my life where I've realized that forces of nature are way more powerful than the human body is when one when I went to Leh and I realized that okay, I have to spend the first day acclimatizing. The second time was when I was in the Rishikesh doing river rafting, and after doing all of the river rafting, after all of the rapids were done, the river seemed very calm, right? And then the instructor was like, okay, like there is a rope tied to you, you have a life jacket, jump into the water and like you can swim. And the moment I jumped into the water, within a 10-second period, I was like about 100 or 200 meters away from my um, raft. Of course it was safe because they knew what they were doing, there were no rapids ahead and all of that. Those two instances told me that the forces of nature can trump you, like how much ever fit you are. So Leh is one region where it tests you, and that's why it's always good to go to your doctor before you go to Leh to ask them, if my head starts hurting, what should I have? There's thin air there, there's less oxygen, what should you really do? And when you go to Khardungla also, Khardungla has thinner air than Leh, so you will feel a headache coming, you will feel your sinuses being blocked. So that's why it's always good to be careful. It's always good to know what you can do and what you can't do. And it's okay to say no, that okay, today I'll just rest it out, because just sitting in your hotel room, you can look at the mountains, and that's
It's still so
that's
pretty, right? And
spectacular.
I think Ladakh is a place where you can embrace slow tourism. You don't have to do everything in a hurry. You don't have to run. And I think the other thing you should always keep in mind when you're visiting Ladakh, based on everything that you've told us right now, is to have a very flexible mindset.
Yep.
And then you can really enjoy your Ladakh holiday, because maybe you can't do one thing today, but you could easily do it tomorrow. And the itinerary also, we change according to what's happening, how's the weather, how are you feeling, because taking care of yourself is the most important thing. And nourishment is important. And you did speak about food a little bit, Neil. So I think I will go there now. And when I was there, I remember tasting the butter tea, but I didn't
The gur
really.
chai.
Yes.
It's an
So
acquired
it is
taste.
an acquired taste, but I think it is more necessary when you're
Yeah.
in the mountains to have that. But talking about food is something that we enjoy in Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. So when you're in Ladakh, some of the things that you can't miss. Let's go there. I remember going to the town and going to a cafe and actually having a lot of. There was a German bakery or something, and you end up
German bakery is
having,
quite famous there.
yeah,
Yeah.
the continental food out there as well. And it was interesting that, hey, we are in Ladakh but doing
Yeah.
this. So definitely try all of that, but also try the Ladakhi specialities. So, what shall we try?
So the first thing everyone will recommend is momos, right? Nowadays, vegetarian and non-vegetarian momos are something that you get. Then the other thing is the thukpa, which is soup. Now, the thukpa comes with a side of small noodles also sometimes, but the thukpa has to be had hot. And if you're a vegetarian, of course, you'll have the vegetarian dough balls, but there's also meat. And when it comes to meat, there is lamb or mutton, or there's also yak meat that you can often get. So there's the thukpa. You of course mentioned the butter tea. Then there is also a very Ladakhi pulao, which is known as the Yarkhandi pulao, if I'm not wrong. And the Yarkhandi pulao is again, it's like a biryani, but it's their style of a biryani. You won't find a lot of spicy stuff there. So there will also be a stew that you can have. The local stew is made from dough balls, certain vegetables, certain meat. A lot of the vegetables, because there's not a lot of vegetation that grows there, are the vegetables that come in from the different parts of India when Khardungla
Donal,
opens
yeah,
up, right?
or yeah.
So that is something that you can have. And apart from that, just roam the markets, because like I said, the Maggie is one dish that you have to have, right? Even a basic Parle G tastes different there for some reason. So I would say stick to
The
these.
air.
Yeah, it's the air, it's the hard water, and that's what really makes the difference. So my trip to Ladakh was not actually a trip which was more about the food, but actually understanding why the people have the food that is there. There is also a traditional Ladakhi pasta dish that you can get there, which is known. I don't remember the name. I think it was something from sea. But that traditional pasta dish really is different. It's not like your Italian pasta or anything like that. But it's something that you will find at the local restaurants there. So I would say better try that out too.
When you're talking about food, it makes me think that most of Ladakhi food is like what you would do when you go for a trek or a hike.
Yeah.
Because you have to sustain yourselves at those heights in the altitude, keep your energy, and get nourishment. So I think the focus is more on nourishment than really about having something very
Yeah, but
elaborate.
once you acclimatize, then you're
Yeah,
okay.
then
Then you
you're
can
okay.
just keep having
And
the
in fact,
pulao
the
all the time.
thukpa is so amazing. Thukpa is really, it was one of my favorites. That is something I really liked. But definitely the next time to
Bombay
Ladakh.
Canteen does a good thukpa. Yeah. If
Oh,
you're in
really?
Mumbai and at least listeners and viewers, if you're in Mumbai, Bombay Canteen does a good thukpa. They have just one dish, but that thukpa is very nice.
Amazing. And the next time to Ladakh, go through all the lists that Neil has been speaking about and tick off all the food items that were there.
One thing that I didn't mention that this region also has the Changtang La Pass, and the Changpa people live there who rear the famous Pashmina goats, from where the Pashmina shawls come in. So the Pashmina wool that is there is quite expensive because it is found only in this one region, and that's why if you one can afford it, get a Pashmina shawl. Traditional Ladakhi hospitality is what you'll find all across Ladakh. And as more and more tourists go there, the locals are also welcoming, because for Ladakh or that region, tourism is the biggest economic driver. More tourists coming there is beneficial for them because that is their livelihood. So often in the months of May or April, you will see hotels being built for the season, and then the hotel gets demolished and again is built, because the harsh climate, because it's harsh winters and super warm summers, right? So often people pack in July and August for a trip to Ladakh and pack jackets, and then suddenly you realize, oh, I should have been in shorts and a t-shirt over here. So that's how you'll really get an idea of this mix of cultures that you'll find in Ladakh.
I think you've given us not only a glimpse of the culture, but a lot of tips also on what to do, how to pack, what to wear, how to acclimatize yourself, what to eat in Ladakh. And, if you can, of course, you can't pick up the entire language, but do say the word Julley whenever you're in Ladakh
Yes.
and greet everyone with a nice warm Julley. And the locals are so friendly. so warm that they will greet you back and welcome you with open arms. So I think, Neil, on this note, we can close today's episode unless there's something else you want to add.
I wouldn't add anything more to that. You mentioned Julley is what the traditional greeting is. I'll only say is that Ladakh is a very unique region of India, and like Sunila mentioned, it's very important that you acclimatize. So I would like to end the episode not by saying ki add it to your bucket list, because I'm sure we've given you enough reasons to add to the bucket list. But I'd rather tell everyone that however fit you are, just acclimatize. It's a safe place. It's a safe place. Everyone can go there. But if you don't acclimatize, you won't have a good holiday. So I often say if your passport is lost on an international holiday, your trip is over. But here I say that if you don't acclimatize, your trip is not going to be as satisfactory as you would.
Probably won't even begin.
Yeah, exactly. You might want to come back, and it often happens to people, and that's fine, right? But it's a great place.
Definitely. So, viewers, this was Ladakh. And Neil, thank you for a really detailed introduction to Ladakh, I would say. You've given us lots of ideas and lots of thoughts to plan our next trip to Ladakh. So, everybody, keep listening to Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. And we will keep coming back to you with another destination, another experience, another place that will inspire all of us to keep traveling. So, like we say in Veena word, celebrate life. Thank you. Bye bye.